Welcome to the Bonded Podcast Foundation Series, hosted by Dr. Patty and Lizzie Shutt,
where we explore attachment healing and the bonds that shape us as children, as adults, and as parents.
We talk about the joy, the complexity, and the challenges that come with forming deep human connection.
From before conception through early childhood and far beyond.
Whether you're expecting, adopting, navigating loss, or supporting someone you love,
or simply wanting to better understand yourself and the ways your early experiences still impact you today,
these conversations are for you.
The podcast isn't just about raising secure children.
It's about healing ourselves, breaking generational cycles, and creating relationships rooted in safety, trust, and authenticity.
You'll hear from experts and parents alike on topics like fertility and perinatal loss,
adoption, returning to work,
temperaments, identity shifts,
and the emotional realities that often go unspoken.
So settle in,
take a breath,
and know that wherever you are on this journey, you're not alone.
You are not alone.
Welcome back to the Bonded Podcast. Lizzie and I are joining you again today alone to recap some of the interviews that we've had during our Foundation series. This one is really highlighting the parents and them specifically rather than the actual process of parenting. And of course, ideal, we're going to speak about, in some ways there's no right or absolute, and it would be really ideal for couples to have been able to prepare their relationship for parenthood. All right. So today we're going to touch on some kind of core themes related to that. Number one, because we know that parenting, bringing children into the world and becoming a family can activate your own early childhood trauma and attachment wounds and unmet needs. So that can be awakened. Number two, becoming a parent is a huge psychological shift in our identity. And so having some preparation for that is super ideal. Number three, the fact that the best laid plans can fail. And so we can do all this planning and preparation. And in our last episode, we talked about flexibility and how, in fact, the ability to be flexible and have really strong communication skills and opportunity to heal, because you don't know what kinds of things can come along, such as infertility, even pregnancy loss, things that can strain a really, really healthy relationship if there aren't some really healthy communication and important kind of bonding already in that relationship. And number four, again, how important the parents' relationship is, because that becomes really the foundation. So we're talking about attachment, bonding, really secure, growing into secure humans, that the parenting relationship is so foundational. And because, of course, it shifts so much in having children, becoming parents, that to me, I think that parents who are willing to individually look at themselves as an individual and be able to work through their own unresolved issues and build a healthy relationship are going to fare much better with any challenges that they have in the beginning of parenting and creating their own little family system. So I think our message basically before raising children together, really cultivating a relationship together that's healthy. The couple is healthy since they're the foundation. So I'm excited to talk about this because we have been cultivating really a series for newly formed couples, perhaps getting ready for marriage, to work through this
phase of life, this new chapter and new commitment, and really growing together and seeing what that looks like. And I think the word healthy, we could interpret that in so many different ways. So that feels important to name, that healthy might just mean be willing to have those hard conversations, be willing to connect with your heart.
I even think about the fact that it is such a huge identity shift to become a parent, even before that, to become a couple.
Yeah,
so to go
exactly.
from living an independent individual life, and now you're coming together as a couple, whether that means marriage or just living together and building a family, however your system's going to look, that there's already a shift. And sometimes people have those shifts all at once.
Yeah.
Okay. And, again, the best laid plans, right, may fail. So if you're a listener and you're like, yeah, all of my shifts came all at once, I certainly have plenty of people in my life who embarked in creating their family in a very, very speedy way. Anyway, so on that note,
let's start with number one.
Yeah, let's go back to number one. And
where it all begins. When we were chatting earlier, so number one is about children can activate our own attachment wounds and how our little kids can activate our inner kid. Just recognizing that it's might not always be your kid is like the issue. And there's such bad behavior, but they're really activating something deeper within you.
Yeah. And I think that even someone who has a more dismissive kind of avoidance style. And again, we can even go back to considering really a child who has a temperament that might be really needy and how that might really activate a parent with a more avoidant, dismissive style, and it might be challenging for them. And, that's okay. I think that awareness is key. This is where mindfulness and attunement and
self-compassion,
even a sense of community, right? Of co-parenting when, again, you're fortunate enough to have two parents raising the child. I share a lot of stories about my husband and I and how we really, really supported each other, because we were not at our optimal level all the time. And so we had just great communication. When I might have been at the end of my rope, he was able to step in and, stretch a little bit and be there. And I think that's so key. And sometimes, again, these all kind of weave in together.
Right.
But I feel like that parenting kind of relationship, how key it is. But we even talk a lot about how great it is to go into this process already having a sense of knowing yourself, knowing sort of what tends to be the things that activate you the most, what your needs are, if you have unmet needs, really looking towards how can you have those needs met, even in your marital relationship, as opposed to putting those needs on your child. Because I think that's really what Lizzie was speaking to as well. So that's number one. I guess I want to kind of touch a little bit on that, I want to go back to earlier episodes, that this doesn't mean that you are going to be a bad parent or that, again, there has to be any right way, even right attachment style. No, it does not. It means really having that awareness and being able to communicate, even accessing support with your co-parent. So the second one that we touched on today and that we've seen throughout this is how big this shift in identity that happens. And even though, there's some preparation for it, even a lot of preparation, I literally feel like there's really no way you can completely prepare for it. And how it comes, so I'm reflecting back on Ashley's initiation into parenthood, how it was very sudden.
Yeah.
She thought she had all kinds of time to prepare. Yeah. And bam, that baby came 8 weeks early. Talk about a shift for her, even though she was pretty darn prepared. I think it was a good example of how nobody prepares. You don't prepare for a premature baby. Like all of her kind of plans and visions of what her early stages were going to look like went out the door day one, and it was a whole new ball game. But I think about even the shift from I'm going to go back to work at a certain time. And so many women work now, and this is a huge theme. And I've run a business where I've had many people leave and have babies. Many people have babies and stay. Many people leave and come back part-time. And you guys heard in our past series, Stephanie L of Cakewalk, where she is somewhere in between all of those, where she sort of stayed a little bit with us, but actually left, and over the process of knowing she wanted to be home with her daughter, has been able to grow an amazing business, a stay-home mom business. So I think really she never would have dreamed that that was going to happen. And we often tell people who work with us in our clinical practice is, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And to really be in the moment, I mean, you can prepare. Would it be ideal as much as you can stay home with your child right after birth? Absolutely. We know that. Not all jobs prepare for that, are willing to allow you to.
Yeah, and I think back to the couple or to the family system, you and your partner is like, yeah, you might have dual income and like kind of have had your relationship based on that. And you think like that's what the plan is going to be. And then you give birth and you just don't want to leave your child. And being a mom just feels like your new calling, and how that is a shift in the relationship to now maybe only having one income, and kind of navigating that conversation ahead of time of like, this is the plan, but we got to be open, which, and see like, what do we really feel? What are our needs? Like, that just feels like an important thing to even prep each other on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, everything changes, right? And I think that in some ways people seem to think that men's lives don't change as much. I think certainly in our modern day, I see men's lives changing dramatically. Men are taking a much more active role, an active stance in parenting. Some dads even have better parental leave than their wives even have.
Sometimes, yeah.
And yet, and even just, knowing, I don't know that women always know what they're going to want.
Right.
And I think that what Lizzie's saying is, this idea of, getting a sense of what could our plans look like if it looked like this, or this. And that goes back to that flexibility piece of, can you envision a way in which you can flex in one direction versus another? And, some moms, imagine, oh, I'm going to stay home. And then they realize I'm actually not good just being home all day. I'm someone who needs more, structure or
interaction, or
more stimulation, or even a break. That they might be a more effective parent when, they're getting out of the house for a few hours a day to do something. So I think really recognizing that you don't always know. Although having the conversations, there are some things that are predictable, right? That this change will bring. There is kind of changes in, the relationship. We'll go into later talking about the relationship between the couple. That's gonna bring some changes, and really knowing that there's not as much freedom and spontaneity that you can have. There's more routine, and you're more exhausted because sometimes we're trying to still do everything we did before and have a whole new human we're taking care of.
Which the third one does really go into this idea of we can have a plan, and then it doesn't actually execute in the way that we are hoping.
Yeah.
So,
and that can be right from the beginning, right? Yeah. Where we have this plan and we're not getting pregnant.
We're going to get married, and then we're going to have a baby in a year. And then we want to space this one out 2.5 years apart. So we have this plan, but it doesn't always.
Best laid plans, right? Some people say, we make a plan and God laughs. And again, here we go. What's that word? Flexibility, right? This sense of knowing that, this is maybe a timeline, and it doesn't always work that way. And so really recognizing whether it's from fertility issues or a loss or even a challenge that comes with like a career change, those things put a lot of stress on the relationship. They impact the couple's relationship. And I think, this is a place sometimes I feel like couples sometimes suffer alone, even when people offer them help. We interviewed a fertility doctor and others who encourage people to go talk to someone, and they don't always do that. They just kind of like, I think about it as a stress reaction, right? That sometimes they just kind of power through and push themselves through. They're focused on the goal and they forget to really take care of that relationship and even themselves in that process. And I'm huge with this. It's really trying to manage, reduce stress, because obviously that is so important in terms of even fertility and grieving, how important it is to grieve a loss before welcoming, a new baby. So we talked a lot about those things. And as a psychologist and therapist, of course, we are big proponents of getting support, whether that's individually in counseling type of relationships, or it could be in groups, right? Like seeking out groups of people. I have a client who is choosing to parent alone. And so she's joined a group of parenting alone by choice group. So of women who are choosing because they are unmarried and uncoupled to go ahead and have a child, and that there's an amazing support group that they go through that as a cohort together. So they're sort of forming their tribe.
Yeah, their community.
Yeah.
And get to have those conversations with someone, get to share their emotions and go through that exploration process with someone.
Yeah. I love that. And I think this then really kind of ends on really protecting the couple relationship. What did you say? You said earlier, I think it was...
Oh, parents go first?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was from Katie May, who we interviewed on her book. She was really speaking to teen parents and using DBT skills and all that in her book. But really, parents go first is one of her common phrases, because kids aren't developed in a lot of ways, especially emotionally developed. So if we are having these high expectations for them to have these level-headed conversations and to just like listen automatically, that is probably going to lead in disappointment for us because our expectations might not get met. And so by the term parents go first is that we can actually meet them on their level using validation and building that bridge of connection. And parents go first in regulating their own nervous system before jumping in to support their child.
I even take this like, so that has to do a lot with parenting and how the parent is taking care of themselves and regulated. But I even think about the couple relationship of how critical, because kids are going to learn. This is the foundational relationship that kids are modeling and learning from. So couples are in a relationship who have really effective communication or even can repair afterwards. Yeah. It's not helpful for parents to never have a conflict in front of your kids. Okay? Because sometimes there are parents who think that, fighting or having a conflict, so to speak, that they cannot do that in front of the children. Well, that's actually not true. That actually children seeing that there is conflict in relationships and seeing how it's resolved and repaired if there was some kind of damage is actually healthy. So I think the parents, their level of like commitment in working on literally their relationship is such a foundation. I think to having secure kids as well. I mean, this can go into like, it's so easy after a child's born to just get overwhelmed by all that's required, that there's really like, it feels like there's no time left.
For you as a couple. Yeah. Baby becomes the whole world. Yeah. And often different needs start to become unmet when the sole focus is on the baby and meeting their needs. Unmet needs arise within you and within the relationship.
Yeah, and I think, it goes back to even having a real sense of one another, because I do think, things, even though everything changes, what doesn't change is sort of even your individual. So I'll speak for myself. I'm someone who, needs, my nervous system needs like quiet to regulate. And so if I'm dysregulated, okay, I'm going to need quiet. So that's not always possible when you have crying children and barking dogs and, a TV on. And so in some ways, I had to accept that the house is not going to be a place but I'm going to create a place in my house, or I'm going to communicate to my partner, I need to go regulate and I need to do this quietly. I'll be right back. Okay. It's not your fault and you don't need to do anything. Right. And part of this is that I know what I need. Not everybody always knows. And I think this speaks to the early kind of marital work, your own individual work, your own development of how do I meet my own needs? Because in that moment, I need my spouse or my partner to go take the baby so that I can take care of myself. As opposed to, let's get rid of the baby so you take care of me. Right? It doesn't work that way. Right? So I just, I think I'm a big proponent of people doing definitely premarital work, because even though things change, they get really more stressful. Okay? So, you add people into your family and cost into, your life. You are you're adding more work and more challenges.
Yeah, more ways that you have to distribute your energy, even of like, okay, this is one person that I share my energy with, but now if I have kids, this is an extension of where I'm having to allocate my energy. And just preparing for that.
So one of the things I like to encourage beyond, maybe a couple has a wonderful, healthy, happy, easy relationship, but doing these kind of early assessments, it's one of the things we're launching is a program for couples who are, choosing marriage and eventually potentially families, is to come through before they actually get married, before they tie the knot. And they move through a series of assessments and mindfulness practices and cultivating really effective communication, not just their communication style and skills, but also really dedicating time, like starting at the beginning to have weekly kind of opportunities. And it doesn't have to be a date night. Some of the couples I've worked with, have morning coffee together. And that every single day, that is what they do. Or it could be in the evening. So these kinds of things that really set the stage for being able to be connected, to stay connected during times when life is likely to be bumpy and a roller coaster. And how do we stay centered and connected? And I think it's building those things from the get-go.
So important and really exciting for me to have these interviews, get to learn from you and through my own studies as I'm venturing down this path. So I look forward to sharing things over the next year too, as we kind of develop more of this program, and I personally am going through it as well. Yeah. So in recap, this episode was more geared towards couples and that relationship, whether you're looking to start a family or not, doing that premarital or pre kind of baby work on yourselves and work together is going to just make things hopefully, more easeful to approach. You already know how to regulate your nervous system. Patty spoke a lot to having that self-awareness through recognizing what your attachment wounds are, your needs are. It's going to set you up for that.
Yeah, and if anyone's ever interested, any listeners who are interested in checking this out, reach out to us because we'd love to share some of the things that we have planned for couples to go through together on a journey 3 to 6 months prior to marriage or prior to having a baby. If they can go through this kind of self-exploration and almost cultivating the soil, right? Of the foundation of their family, whether it's just going to be the two of them or they're going to nurture and invite children into their little nest.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. So please reach out, and if you have any questions as well, we'd love to create more episodes specifically for you. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If it spoke to you, it'll probably speak to someone you love too. Share it with a friend and leave us a 5-star review to help spread the message it's never too late to heal.